All right, you guys, our first guest today is a gentleman that we've had on the show a few times over the years as a game maker, but now he is a legit filmmaker. Josh Tsui joins us, and he has completed his work on Insert Coin, which is a fabulous documentary I got to watch last night about the history of Midway Games. Everybody, please welcome Josh Tsui. How are you?
Good.
Great to see you, sir.
Thank you. No, it's great to be back.
How do you feel now that you've got a, when we talked before, which it's been like a year and a half, you had a lot of work already done, but it wasn't done. But now it is done, and you can show it to the world. How does it feel to finish a documentary like this?
It feels so good to get that weight off. It's I think it was like about a year and a half ago that we last talked. And it was just one of those things where I kept tinkering with it over and over again. This is one of the problems of passion projects is that you just don't know when to end, so I didn't have, a game publisher telling me to wrap things up or somebody else, lording over me. And so finally I had to get to a point where it had to be taken out of my hands. And just, so I can just walk away from it. So it feels great. Suddenly my evenings are freed up to actually do things like play games and watch movies.
You obviously had a long run making video games, and I'm wondering if making movies was your first creative obsession, and then you made games, and then you got back to movies, or was this just something that erupted out of your love for the source material, the subject matter, and you had to become a filmmaker?
Yeah, so I grew up in Southern California, so I grew up around wanting to make movies. Much like a lot of people my age. When Star Wars came out, we all wanted to make Star Wars. So for the longest time, I wanted to make films, and I actually went to film school, and I kind of got into video games by accident. So when I got into Midway, it was much like many people back in the day, I thought I was going to be there for maybe a year or two, and then go back to doing filmmaking. And so obviously that didn't happen. So 20 plus years later, I thought to myself, I need to make a film, at least one film in my life, and this seemed like a great subject for it. So it's a little bit of both. I had filmmaking in my blood. I love video games. How can I, combine the two? And
that is awesome. Have we lost him? We got a freeze. Oh, there you are. You're back. We had a little bit of a freeze.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. No worries. The subject of the documentary is Midway and Midway Games, and you worked there, so obviously you had a connection and some personal sort of reasons why you wanted to make this. But explain to everybody what was so special about Midway.
Man, it was it was this era in the early '90s, especially with Midway. A lot of people don't realize that arcades had died for a long time, and so this is a point in Midway's history where they were open to experiment with anything. It's kind of like one of the quotes from the film from Ernest Cline is that Midway was like the punk rock of video games, and that was back then. There was no rules. We were kind of like all Lord of the Flies style making these games, and so the magic of it was we're making this up as we go along. The only thing we didn't have much money or anything, so the only thing we had was our own personalities and creativity. So a lot of the games that you see coming out of that era, it's because the creators just infused themselves into it. They didn't know if it was going to be good or not, so they're like, well, you know what, we're going to entertain ourselves and see what happens. And it's very, I liken it to Chuck Jones's Bugs Bunny cartoons or Tex Avery making his MGM cartoons. So it's just throw everything out there and see what happens.
Awesome.
Yeah. Josh, it really reminds me, I don't know if you've seen a documentary called The Imagineering Story, and it's about Image Comics. Yep. And it's just a great piece about kind of these comic creators who became rock stars. I always attribute as Midway during your time was kind of the equivalent of that, of you guys being kind of changing the game and coming together and making stuff that was out of this world. I'm curious, how was that? How was when you're making Mortal Kombat, you got to see your game all over the news, and it really created the ESRB, and it stemmed so many new projects from it.
Yeah, no, I mean that the teams making these games, I think they were just as surprised as anybody that they grew up, that they blew up as much as they did. And it's funny you bring up like the ESRB and how that got triggered from these games. like we all kind of reveled in it. It's kind of like, oh man, we're getting in trouble, and this all it's going to do is it's going to equate to bigger sales. I mean, that was just it was just such a careless attitude at the time, for better or for worse, to be quite honest with you. So it was, to see things get taken so seriously when we were just kind of, joking around was pretty enlightening. And looking back on it now, a lot of it seems kind of silly, but it was a big deal back then.
Yeah, it was life or death in the industry at that point, wasn't it? I mean, you had like major politicians. With, there was a target ridicule on some of your games, man.
Yeah.
One of my favorite bits in there. Well, I have a soft spot for Eugene Jarvis. We'll talk about that. But one of my favorite bits is John Tobias kind of recognizing that he was working with gods, and he didn't know that he was going to be there. This is the co-creator of Mortal Kombat, and he comes off, and I've known John. I met John at the very first E3 back in 1995, but he just comes off so, he's incredibly successful, but he comes off just as a very down-to-earth and humble guy. Is that kind of what you picked up from him?
That's exactly it. I mean, here's somebody who created a franchise that with billions and millions of dollars, and it's still hugely succceusly. And back then, just a very humble, quiet guy doing his thing. And even to this day, he's the exact same way. I mean, he's the creative director of a new Warner Brothers studio out in San Diego now. Same person as that I knew, that I met 20 plus years ago. But I would say that was kind of the personality of just about everybody in that studio. These guys were like wildly successful, both financially and critically. But ultimately, they all did the work. Everything was just it was just very I don't know how to put it. It was like a very Midwestern type thing. Where it's like, hey, we're just go in, punch the clock, do our work, do it as well as possible. Afterwards, go play games, go have a drink, something like that. But nobody had airs or anything. Nobody was super arrogant or anything like that. We all knocked each other down quite a bit.
That's awesome. How old were you when you were working at Midway?
When I was working at Midway, I was in my mid-20s. And and the funny thing is that, and you brought up Eugene Jarvis, I grew up with 80s arcade games like Defender and Robotron. And when I got to Midway, I didn't even know Eugene Jarvis was still there. So when I walked in and there's Eugene Jarvis greeting me and just kind of giving me a big welcome, it blew my mind. I was like, for an arcade rat like me, it was like walking into Oz, from Kansas, and just seeing all of these people that were, especially Jarvis, were heroes to me when I was a kid.
Yeah, Josh, someone in their mid-20s now probably missed that whole era of Midway. Why do you think that that's important to tell that story and to show the history?
I think, part of it is just so people can see where games came from. Like a lot of times, and especially with Mortal Kombat obviously is a hugely successful, strong franchise even to this day. But to see the humble beginnings of it is, I think is something that's super enlightening for younger people. And also, I just think that, I think it's kind of a kick for younger people to see how different it was to make games back then, or how naive we were about what we were putting into the games. Forget if you want to make games or not, or even if you don't like playing video games, to see just how something got started almost by accident. I think is just entertaining, in any medium.
What you were going to premiere this movie at South by Southwest, and of course the event got canceled because of COVID-19. How you're a filmmaker now, and you've got to find distribution for your movie. How are people going to be able to watch Insert Coin? And are you guys going to do, virtual sort of premiere? Like, how are you going to get the buzz about this incredible movie out there? Sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's I'll be honest with you, and this is in speaking with other filmmakers that were supposed to be at South by and everything. This is so unprecedented that nobody knows what the next steps are. It's not like I can contact somebody and say, hey, this happened, what would you do? And everyone's like, I have no idea. And I'm talking to like established documentarians. So right now, I mean, one of the benefits of getting accepted in South by is that it puts a nice stamp on the film. So the film, is going to be at quite a few other film festivals. So it's going to go through the film festival circuit. We'll see if there are any further cancellations and such. But because of that stamp of approval by South by, we've had distributors and various people contacting about the film, so it's given a lot of visibility. And so we're talking to a lot of people. We're trying to figure out, distribution and screening options and things like that. And just we'll see where the chips fall at this point. But like I said, it's like if South by, just getting accepted in South by was a huge deal for me. Like I've been taking this film one step at a time, and getting into the festival was a big deal.
Congratulations, man.
Yes.
No, that is amazing, dude. It is amazing that he got it there.
So that was a victory in itself. So the next thing is, all right, let's figure out what plan B is and make the best of this.
Yeah.
Do you think that we're turning a corner? I mean, you've been in this business, in the video game business, for a long time, as we have. Not this guy, but we've been in the biz for a long time, and I feel like things are shifting. We've got a Nintendo theme park happening. We have a Sonic the Hedgehog becoming the #1 movie in the world, and Pokemon as a huge film with Ryan Reynolds, and docs are starting to emerge. We had the NBA Jam, the book, not too long ago. We had Rayan on. So do you feel like the appetite is just bigger and more aware and more appreciative of work like yours now?
Yeah, no, most definitely. It's interesting because, we kind of grew up in an era where video games were considered like a niche thing for kids.
Yeah.
Guess what? Like, when a game like NBA Jam makes 3 times the amount of Jurassic Park back in the day, that means there were a lot of kids playing those games, and now they're all adults. And they're adults that suddenly have jobs and are able to buy things. So the this niche market has become the mainstream. And I always kind of equated to movies from Marvel. Marvel comics back in the day, it was a niche comic book thing and stuff. But now all the people that love those movies, love those comic books, they have families now, they're grown up, and they see these movies, and these IPs have now become the mainstream. So, I've talked to a lot of distributors, and one of the things they always ask, well, hey, this documentary is great, but it's about video games. We don't know if that's a niche market or not, and I have to educate them and say, this is a massive audience. It'd be like saying, people watching movies or TV is a niche audience. It's like, it's just not the case. Everybody is playing games now.
Awesome. Well, the Marvel analogy is very apt, because one of my favorite lines in the movie, and I'm not spoiling too much here, is the connection or the correlation that Eugene Jarvis is kind of like Midway's Stan Lee in a way. I know a lot of people don't know who Eugene Jarvis is. I work with a lot of the students here at the Vancouver Film School who are in game design, and they've never heard of Eugene Jarvis. And your movie is going to help to change a little bit of that. But tell the world why Eugene Jarvis is so important in our business.
So, Eugene, like in the first big wave of video games back in the early 80s, Eugene Jarvis created a game called Defender. And that was, back in the day, it was one of the most successful, if not the most successful arcade games of the time. And you're talking about, arcade games back then cost, let's say, $4,000 to sell. They sold over 50,000 units. So if you do the math, it's just massive.
That's
the
awesome.
thing is, this was back in the early 80s. And over time, he is like the Stan Lee, or I jokingly like to say, he's like the Cher of video games, because every decade he has a hit game all the time. And he survives, and he influenced an entire generation, such as myself, to love video games, love arcade games, and want to create these games. And he's inspired multiple generations. So I was probably the first generation of kids inspired by him. But now he's making games to this day. He's the #1 arcade manufacturer. He owns the #1 arcade manufacturer in the world, And if you go with Dave & Buster's or anything like that, most of the games are from his company.
Right. So if anybody walks into an arcade, and a modern arcade, you're seeing his work all over the place. But he does like giant-sized Space Invaders, and his company's Raw Thrills. Yeah, he does tons.
Yeah. So he's inspired. So he's continuing. He's still making games. He still works hard at it. He's still inspiring people. And when I started this film, I knew that it would start with Eugene, but I didn't know where the story was going to go. But the more I talked to everybody and saw how we were all raised on his game, that really solidified the story. The story, the Midway story is also the story of Eugene Jarvis and how it all began.
I love that, man. I love that, in every soundbite he gives you in the movie, he's also laughing. It just he comes off as a person that's very aware of how fortunate he has been in his life, and he seems to love what he gets to do as much as we love his work.
Absolutely. He just has that energy, the positivity, and he'll always make time for people. He's just like a mad evil genius, and we all got affected by him.
Awesome. So, Josh, when are people going to be able to see Insert Coin, and where?
Boy, that's a good question. So, like I said, we're working on the distribution. Like I said, we're going on, on quite a few different film festivals. But ultimately, once it gets distribution, obviously, we're going for like some of the largest streaming platforms. In talks with them, we want to get it everywhere. So I know that's kind of a big answer, but I don't have the solid answer right now. But our goal is to blast it out, not just to people, not just the video game outlets, but just everywhere, because it's, we want to hit as many mainstream platforms as possible.
Josh, before we let you go, what's your favorite Midway game?
Oh my gosh! So my favorite, the one that I always stop. There's two actually, but they're both basketball. So NBA Jam, obviously, and NBA Showtime.
Okay.
Showtime. Obviously I'm biased because I was working at that time, but there's something about NBA Showtime that we would be super competitive on it, and that's like the one game that I would just be very mean about. Like I would be very. I love those games. But yeah, beyond that, Robotron is a fantastic game.
Oh, Robotron.
Yeah.
Right here, man, right in my heart. We keep getting great new Mortal Kombat games. How come we don't have new NBA Jam games? I just don't understand that.
I'm telling you, so EA owns the IP for that, and they did a great version a few years ago. You guys were talking about the NFL license and bringing back games like Blitz and such. Yeah, there really should be a crazy NBA Jam style game out there, and especially in the esports era, I think it'd be fantastic. So yeah, everybody go petition EA to get that license back up.
I'll make sure our friends at EA see this video. Josh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And good luck with getting Insert Coin out there, and keep your eyes peeled. We'll let everybody know when it's out there, and I'll have a review of the movie very soon on the channel. But thank you, sir, and congratulations for finishing this wonderful feat.
Yes.
Thank you.